Welcome to the Ohio Attorney General's Bureau of Criminal Investigation here in London, Ohio. Each day, we work to solve crimes that have occurred in the state of Ohio. Many of the things that you see on TV, we do right here. Come on in, let's take a look. We're now in the identification section. Here we keep all state criminal records, which includes fingerprints and photographs. Here we have over 6 million arrest records.
The identification section consists of 4 units. The first unit is our criminal section, who is responsible for processing arrest data from law enforcement, as that arrest data is submitted electronically into our office. That information is comprised in our computerized criminal history and is reflected in the files that are shown behind me. The second unit that we have is our civilian unit. The civilian unit is responsible for processing background checks.
Here for BCI or FBI or both? Both? Okay, just fill this out.
BCI processes background checks for the state of Ohio in addition to the FBI. Currently, we process over 1 million background checks annually. The technical unit is responsible for identifying prints and looking at the prints that are coming in and comparing those prints with prints that are already on file with the BCI record.
This is what it's saying is a possible hit to, or a match.
That unit classifies prints, and they're also responsible for training and assistance in having computerized classes and things such as that related to fingerprints. Our last unit in the section is the quality assurance unit. This unit is responsible for providing training in the field for local law enforcement and also for courts. They are also responsible for performing audits, making sure that we are in compliance with the Attorney General guidelines in addition to the federal guidelines with the FBI.
Identification plays a critical role in public safety throughout Ohio. Our civilian background checks are very important as they look at potential workers in sensitive jobs across this state. Workers in our healthcare industry that might take care of our loved ones. Bus drivers that drive our children to school each day. We need to make sure through these background checks that these individuals have not committed offenses that might disqualify them from employment. Also important are our criminal background checks. These assist law enforcement, criminal justice practitioners, and the courts in knowing exactly who they're facing in that courtroom or when making a stop or an arrest in our community.
OHLEG is an acronym. It stands for the Ohio Law Enforcement Gateway. It's a web portal provided by the Attorney General's office for our law enforcement community. It allows them to have access to a number of databases, which helps them in the daily roles that they perform to the community in general.
488. I'll be out.
Some of the things that OHLEG provides is the criminal history database, which is the CCH database that allows officers to see if someone has a criminal history. It also allows the officers to look at a driver's license. It allows them to gain access either from their office or from their cruisers. Some of the other databases that our officers actually utilize is the RMS system, which stands for Records Management System. They also have access to things like CCW, which is the Concealed Carry Permit, as well as a number of other databases that they utilize in the course of their work. The OHLEG Help Desk currently has 6 individuals, soon to be 7 full staff, providing assistance to our law enforcement community for any kind of a question they may have.
Oh, you're welcome.
On the OHLEG applications that they utilize. There was a very specific incident that occurred recently in one of our counties. A perpetrator had committed crime against a victim, and the only information that the officers were able to ascertain at the moment was the color and type of car. The officers went into the OHLEG system and did a search on the color and type of car, and were able to locate a few cars in the county, and as they began to look into those vehicles, they were able to find the person that had actually perpetrated the crime. This took a matter of just a few short hours to get this information and to get on the way to their apprehension of their perpetrator. Without the OHLEG system, our officers would have had to use another system that would have taken them a significant amount of time longer to obtain the same information, and that is the vehicle color and type, which they obtain through OHLEG in just moments of time. The OHLEG system helps officers who are working in the field to very quickly access the information that they need.
You may have seen one of our crime scene trucks in your neighborhood, or possibly on TV. Each day in Ohio, our special agents are out processing crime scenes. We do this to help the police, the sheriffs, and the prosecutors around the state. The evidence that is gathered from those crime scenes is ultimately used to convict criminals. Each day, 24/7, our people are available. No matter where the crime occurs in the state of Ohio, our unit can be there.
In the crime scene unit at BCI, we're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We do a whole wide variety of crime scenes every day. We have requests by law enforcement agencies of all different sizes. We utilize all the training and all the knowledge that we have to collect facts from that crime scene. Typically, we'll do a walkthrough of the scene to see what type of evidence we have visible there. And then we have other methods after we find the evidence that's visible. We have other methods to try to detect some of the stuff that you can't see with the naked eye. Anytime there's something that happens within a crime scene, whether that be a suspect going through a door, a victim going through a door, that person leaves something. And whether you can see it with your naked eye or not, that's what we have to try to come up with. So in the touch DNA, we can't see that, but we use swab doorknobs. We will swab things that people may have touched other than doorknobs, such as drinking glasses. We take a lot of pictures at every crime scene. A typical homicide scene that we would work, it would be normal to have 300, 400 pictures of just that scene. Once we take our photographs, we will mark specific evidence that we want to collect, usually with numeric placards, like a number 1, a number 2. We re-photograph that evidence before we collect it. And typically, we will take 3 to 4 different pictures of the same evidence before we even move it. Then we'll collect it and properly package it, whether that's in paper bags, envelopes, whatever it is that evidence calls for us to package it in. We also do a lot of fingerprinting, obviously blood testing, footwear. You could be finding a hair on a bed, and some people say it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Well, if you know what you're looking for, then you can find it. We think outside the box a lot, and in doing that, we have collected items at a crime scene such as some matchsticks. We've taken half-eaten apples where DNA was found on the apple. We've taken toilet paper rolls where on the inside of the toilet paper roll, the suspect's DNA has been found on the inside, touch DNA. We've taken, like at burglary scenes and B&E scenes, we'll find a stain where a suspect was sweating and they touched something and transferred their sweat onto a door or a window, and have been able to obtain DNA from that. So you can have anywhere from 20 items of evidence all the way up to 200. It takes a very special person to do crime scene work because it's very physically demanding, it's very mentally taxing, and sometimes you're up for days on end working different aspects of crime scene work. You have to have a strong love for science. You have to have a strong love for actually finding pieces to the puzzle.
Here in the Criminal Intelligence Unit, which we commonly know as CIU, we assist local, state, and federal law enforcement officers with their investigations, as well as we research crime trends, crime patterns for local distribution to help assist with their cases. We also work with international law enforcement agencies in the effect of their missing children or missing individuals or abducted children. Another aspect of the Criminal Intelligence Unit is our Missing Persons Unit is housed within our unit as well. We work with federal, state, and local law enforcement to help with their endangered missing adults, their runaway children, as well as the children that qualify for Amber Alerts.
We work alongside special agents and investigators to help determine information in their cases. We do a lot of criminal research, crime pattern analysis, social networking analysis, and those kinds of things to help connect the dots in their cases. In a series of crimes, we can employ a resource called geographic profiling analysis that uses mathematical algorithms in two ways. The first way is we can use it to help determine the next incident in a series, when and where the next one is likely to occur. So for instance, in a series of church burglaries, using the programs we were able to tell when and where the next one was likely to occur, but also where the suspect was likely residing. We determined that point was under a bridge. Local authorities investigated and were able to locate the suspect under the bridge where he had set up a makeshift operating site.
LINK stands for Linking Individuals Not Known. It is a program that matches DNA from biological family members to DNA from unidentified remains that have been located both statewide and at the national level. We've had 15 matches in the last 3 years. What I mean by match is that they have actually been able to be identified. Another way we assist law enforcement is with court presentations. With the large amount of information that they have, sometimes jury members get a little overwhelmed. So what we try to do is simplify it in charts, graphs, PowerPoint presentations.
We do a wide variety of work in the Criminal Intelligence Unit. We assist on all varieties of criminal investigations as well as missing persons, unidentified decedents. We work with local law enforcement to develop leads, connect the dots in their cases, prosecute criminals, and bring home missing people.
There is no typical day in evidence receiving. We take in evidence, sometimes we'll have a line down the hallway. We do begin the chain of custody for every case. Nothing can come into the lab without us touching it first. It must be from a police department, sheriff's office, or prosecutor's office. We take in drugs, latent evidence, trace evidence, gunshot residue, DNA, do a lot of DNA. When items come in, the agency lets us know what they're looking for. The agency gets a submission sheet, and then we put all the evidence away in our property room, and it sits there until the scientist is ready to examine it. We've had many days where an agency will bring in 80 drug cases. That takes about 2 of us typing nonstop for 3 hours to get 80 cases in for chemistry. Everything has to be exact. I mean, it's evidence. It's going to be used in court. Once they receive their report, that's how the agency knows that their evidence is ready and that they can come pick it back up, and then we go in the property room when they get here and return anything to them that's done. The chain starts here, the chain ends here.
It's amazing how much evidence can come just from a cell phone, from a text or a picture.
On a typical cell phone, it can easily average about 64 gigabytes of information. Computers are easily 10 times that, if not up to 1 terabyte hard drive. And to put that in perspective, a 1 terabyte hard drive could hold about 708 days worth of music, so almost 2 years of music played nonstop.
We place the phone in the Faraday box to block communications with the cellular towers. That allows us to put the phone into airplane mode, which prevents further communications once we remove the phone from the box.
We then connect it to our universal forensic extraction device, which allows us to extract the data off the phone and onto a hard drive.
Some cases could be, just a few days, it might be just one phone we need to take a look at. And other cases could be multiple computers, multiple phones, multiple social media accounts, and could take months or even years.
When we have hard drives that are damaged, we bring them to our workstation where we can analyze them on a more basic level and extract data in sectors that are typically unreadable. The drive is brought over and connected directly to the circuit board. Once the imaging process is finished, we have access to evidence that may previously have been unavailable.
In addition to physical evidence, such as a cell phone or computer, we may have evidence that needs to be collected from service providers for services that a suspect or victim may have been using, such as Facebook, Google, Verizon, Sprint, just to name a few. So we may have to assist them in preserving that evidence and serving legal compliance, such as a search warrant, to get that evidence back and present it for a case. I had one case in particular, a homicide case, where the victim was communicating with the suspect, and in interviewing the suspect, he hadn't really divulged the full extent of their relationship and what had been going on between them leading up to the murder. I was able to find that information through Facebook messages and text messages and help them establish a little more of the facts of the relationship between the suspect and the victim. It can be exciting, it can be rewarding, because you know that like in the example I just gave, you know, the victim you're kind of their voice at that point. I mean, they're no longer here in this world, and they don't have, you're trying to help make sure whoever was involved, pays for the crime that they committed.
Here in the latent print section, we are examining evidence submitted to us by law enforcement agencies. And what we are doing is we are looking for latent prints. On the palms of your hands, including the tips of your fingers, even on the soles of your feet, there is specialized skin that grows in raised portions called friction ridge skin. These ridges are not straight or even continuous, but they break and split randomly and often to form different patterns, even in small parts of the hand. This ridge flow is unique to each individual person. No two people have been found to have the same configuration of ridges, even identical twins. When these ridges contact a surface, what you leave behind, whether it be sweat, dirt, or oil, leaves what is called a latent fingerprint. Sometimes these prints are visible, such as if they're on a glass or a mirror. Other times they are not. These latent fingerprints can be visualized by a couple different methods. Most often we will use superglue fuming in addition to powdering, chemical development such as anhydrine, or the use of a fluorescent dye stain coupled with an alternate light source, or ALS, in order to be able to see these prints fluorescing. One of the tools we utilize in visualizing latent prints is Photoshop. In Photoshop, our main goal is to get a dark ridge on a light surface.
And using Photoshop, we can get rid of the blue and red background colors.
After we have visualized these prints, we will try and capture and preserve them. That can be done either by lifting them with tape or by digital means, such as the use of a flatbed scanner or photography. Once a print is determined to be sufficient or able to be identified, we will compare it to any finger or palm print cards either we have on file or are submitted to us. If that print is still unidentified, if it's good enough, we'll search it through the Automated Fingerprint Identification System, or AFIS. AFIS will give the scientist a list of 20 candidates for them to compare. Computer's not making the identification, the scientist is.
We generally are looking to find if a cartridge case or bullet came from a particular gun. If we don't have the gun, we're looking to give the officer a gun prediction as to what type of gun they may be looking for. This is a replica of the inside of the barrel, a cross section, and there are lands and grooves with a twist in the barrel, and it's manufactured that way. Each barrel has a lands and grooves with a twist. When the bullet comes out the barrel, those lands and grooves and the direction of the twist is imparted onto the bullet. I have here a Ruger 9mm Luger and a Smith & Wesson 9mm Luger. They will both leave individual marks on both the cartridge case and the bullet. If I had 10 of these Ruger 9mm Lugers, each of them would leave different marks on the bullet and the cartridge case. And we're not able to specifically put it to the person, but we can say that this, if it came from this Ruger, without a doubt, fired that cartridge case or that bullet. When an agent or a law enforcement agency brings in a gun that they want compared to a specific bullet or cartridge case, we have a firing tank upstairs that contains water. In that water is heavy, so it stops a bullet. We fire the weapon right into the water in fairly pristine condition so that we can use it for comparison. If I have a bullet from a body or from a crime scene of some sort, and I can make my test fire, retrieve it from the water tank, we have a compound microscope, and we use that for comparison. NIBIN is the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network. We can enter a picture of that cartridge case, the breech face, and try to match it up with the others that are in the database. If we get a hit, what we call a hit, we will look at it on the computer, and then if it was, we will call for the actual cartridge case. If we enter the cartridge case, if it doesn't come back with a match, it stays in the system to be matched for future reference with other cartridge cases. In distance determination, we are looking to give an approximation of how far the shooter was from the victim. We can do that by using chemical tests. We're looking for gunshot residue, and we are also looking for vapor sled that comes out of the end of the barrel. If we receive a tool or a tool mark, we're looking for what type of tool might have made the mark. For instance, again, a pry tool, such as a screwdriver or a pry bar. A cut, we're looking for what type of cut, a shear, bolt cutters, that sort of thing. Most people, you can't see anything on here. Everything leaves a tool mark. I really enjoy my job. It can be challenging at times, but we assist in getting dangerous criminals off the street, and when a prosecutor calls and says, "Thank you, you've done a good job, we help get a dangerous criminal off the street," it's very rewarding.
Here in question documents, we examine documents for authorship and authenticity. We can get one item, we can have a case that's got 30,000 documents in it. And we not only look at checks, petitions, so voter fraud type cases, homicides, suicides, school bomb threats, bombings, anything that's written. A majority of what we do is handwriting comparison, which is a side-by-side comparison of known writing to question writing. When you write, you think about what you're writing and not necessarily how you're writing it. Handwriting becomes subconscious to you, so you're thinking about the content of your writing. So you're going to add individual features like size, space, speed, slant, beginning, ending strokes, the way you lay out a document. We can also look at alterations, so if somebody has changed information within a document, values and checks, obliterated or written over top of things, we can examine those types of problems using instrumentation. It's not always necessarily visible to the naked eye, but once you start to use microscopes and instrumentation, some of that information that's smaller comes to light and could be what's most useful. For example, I have a case that I'm working currently right now where there's several different question notes that are involved, and I have several different notebooks that are also involved. And I have one notebook in particular where not only is the paper consistent in all its physical characteristics, there's also a printing defect on the paper. So I can kind of narrow it down to that notebook, and we were able to look at the paper along the edge, like when you perforate it and you tear it out, and we were able to make a fracture match back from one of the notes to the notebook. So I can definitively say that that page came from the notebook because the paper's consistent, has the printing defect, and now I have a paper fracture match tear as well. So it's actually putting that notebook page back into that notebook. One of the examples of casework that we've done here in the question document section, and it was using some of our instrumentation, is we had a receipt from a homicide in 1996. The receipt was submitted to the document section in 2009. They were looking to get the time and date stamp from the receipt. It had been obliterated, so the ink had run, been removed due to time just sitting in the case file. They'd actually taken it from the scene at the time of the homicide. It had been in the trash, so it also come in contact with trash juice or whatever had been in the trash can at the time. And we were able, using our instrumentation, to reveal that time and date stamp, which placed the purchase of a large amount of bleach and dinner steaks 2 hours after the victim had died. The husband is now serving time for killing his wife. Initially he had said it was a suicide, but that helped to place that he had gone to purchase these items to help clean up post her death. For me, I really enjoy getting that problem in that's not necessarily everyday evidence that we get in, something that I can kind of spend some time piecing the puzzle back together, either doing instrumentation work or fracture matches where we can look at papers to see if they came from the same source, things like that, that really kind of stretch some of our fundamental knowledge and allow us to take that evidence one step further.
One interesting thing about the Trace Evidence Unit is that we process a wide variety of samples. Classic trace evidence involves evidence that is particulate, such as glass fragments, paint chips, and fibers. Those samples are analyzed using various microscopes. Also, we analyze for gunshot primer residue. And those samples are tested on an instrument called a scanning electron microscope. Our paint database is a database that's linked with the Canadian system and with the FBI. And through analysis of the various layers of an unknown paint chip, we are often able to determine the make and model of the vehicle that left those unknown paint chips at a scene. We also examine hairs to determine if they are of human or animal origin. Other evidence that we analyze in trace includes items that are larger, such as footwear impressions, tire impressions, things that are broken or torn that we can fracture match together. Those are almost like putting pieces of puzzles together. The Trace Evidence section uses a database that is a shoe print image capture and retrieval system. And we are able to search unsolved footwear impressions left at crime scenes in an attempt to determine what type of shoe left that impression. At this point, we have approximately 31,000 different tread designs that we can search. Fracture match samples are important because they're conclusive. If you and a friend each have a coffee cup and you run into each other and you both drop your cups and they break, to put those cups back together, those parts won't interchange. Your coffee cup parts will go together and hers will. So when we do a fracture match analysis, we can conclusively say that the broken pieces once came from another object to the exclusion of all others. One important aspect about trace evidence examinations is to determine if a known and questioned sample can be associated to each other. So using tape as an example, if an unknown tape is left at a scene and a suspect is found with a known roll of tape, by comparing those tapes, our job is to determine scientifically if those tapes could have had a common origin.
The BCI Crime Lab processes hundreds of thousands of pieces of evidence a year. Forensic scientists analyze the evidence and then testify about it in court. DNA evidence is among the most powerful evidence that we have. We find it on skin cells, saliva, blood, an apple, piece of clothing, a pen, toothbrush, a razor.
The forensic biology section of BCI is the first stop for items of evidence that come in for DNA testing. We have a couple pieces of equipment that we use on a regular basis. We use microscopes to look at hairs and cells from body fluids. We also use special ultraviolet lights to look at body fluid stains that wouldn't necessarily be visible to the naked eye. We also have an infrared camera that helps us find blood stains on dark clothing that, again, wouldn't be able to be seen by the eye. Two of the body fluids that we can test for in forensic biology are blood and amylase. Amylase is a component of your saliva, and the test that we use for amylase is a special paper that, when we apply the chemical to it, turns blue, and any amylase that is present on the paper turns white. The blood test that we use is another color change test, and when we apply the chemical to anything that contains blood, it will turn blue. When we find a biological fluid, we will take either a cutting or a swabbing of the item, depending on what it is, and then we will retain that cutting or swabbing put it in our secure vault where the DNA analysts will pick it up for their testing. We receive a very wide variety of items to test, anywhere from weapons used in crimes to clothing left at the scene of the crime, cigarette butts. We've even received birthday cake that was sampled by a suspect at the scene of the crime, just anything you can think of.
The DNA process is carried out in 4 steps. The first step is extraction, where we're using like a something similar to a laundry detergent to separate the DNA from the item that it was submitted on. During that process, we also want to clean up the DNA, get rid of anything extraneous so that we have a pure DNA profile. The next step is called quantification, and that's when we're counting how much DNA, how much total human, how much total male DNA is present in that sample. The next step is an amplification process, and it's a chemical Xeroxing. So we're creating millions and millions of copies of the DNA that is already there. And then finally is the detection step, where we're using sophisticated instrumentation to take a snapshot of what the DNA profile looks like. Once we obtain a DNA profile from the evidence, we'll make comparisons to known reference standards if they've been submitted with the case. And a known reference standard is a DNA sample from a known individual that we're comparing to directly to see if they could have contributed that DNA. In the event that we have an unknown DNA profile that is obtained, we're going to want to enter that profile into the CODIS database if it is eligible to attempt to get a forensic or investigative lead as to who could have contributed that DNA.
CODIS stands for the Combined DNA Index System. It's a collection of databases from across the state as well as the country, and it's run by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. CODIS for the state of Ohio is kept here at BCI in the London laboratory.
The database contains offenders and arrestees, and then unknown profiles from unsolved crimes and all the local agencies they put those in.
Here in the state of Ohio, we use what we call as buccal collectors or swabs. They're basically sticks with filter paper on the end. They're used to collect DNA samples from the inside of a person's cheek. All persons arrested for a felony charge in the state of Ohio, as well as all convicted offenders, are collected. All of those samples are sent to us at BCI, which we then process and obtain a DNA profile. And the DNA profiles which we collect then go into the CODIS database.
We start with a fancy hole punch that takes a really small section of the sample out, and we move that forward using robotics and chemistry, different chemistries, to get the DNA off of that piece of paper. And through a process of copying the DNA that's on that little piece of paper and then putting it in a fancy oven that breaks it down into smaller pieces, we're able to get a DNA profile, and that's what we analyze. If it's a good enough profile, we'll put it into CODIS. An unknown DNA profile from a crime scene is stored at a local database, and that's searched every day against the offenders and arrestees that we have here in CODIS, and they're matched. That provides investigative lead to law enforcement here in Ohio and across the United States.
A CODIS hit may not happen today or tomorrow or even a year from now, but as new samples are added to the database every day, you never know when an old case may hit to a new sample which is entered.
The chemistry section will get sometimes 3 or 4 times more submissions than all the other sections put together. We see a combination of different controlled substances, everything from heroin to cocaine, methamphetamine to the new synthetic drugs and marijuana. We'll start with a visual examination. We'll do a visual examination of the item when it comes in, take an accurate weight because penalties in Ohio are based on weight. And we'll do some preliminary testing to give us an idea of what we might be working with, and we'll follow that up with confirmatory testing to positively identify what we have. Color test is presumptive, and it essentially gives you an idea of what you might be dealing with. Certain drug classes will turn certain colors using different reagents. So it gives you an idea of what you have and where to move on to next. For example, if you had heroin, which is an opioid, one of our color tests would make that come out as purple. That same color test, though, that same reagent, will show methamphetamine as an orange color. We have instruments that will confirm the nature of a substance. They are scientifically called a gas chromatograph with a mass spectrometer. The gas chromatograph aspect will separate things in a solution based on size. And then after it's been separated based on size, it's sent through the mass spectrometer. And that will break down a substance into its ionic content and will give you a repeatable pattern and essentially tell you exactly what you have. And throughout the whole process, you're constantly taking notes, appearance of the packaging, appearance of the substance itself, the results of your testing, until you get to the end where you can write your report stating what you have found. As a forensic scientist at the BCI, it is important to test these drugs that are being submitted by law enforcement agencies, mainly for public safety. There are many instances where a person believes that they are taking one drug and it turns out that they are not taking that drug. It's something completely different. And a lot of times this can lead to injury or death. BCI is here to help law enforcement agencies enforce drug laws. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there that are breaking those drug laws.
I certainly hope you've enjoyed your tour of BCI. You know, we have 2 other crime labs, one at Richfield and one at Bowling Green. The next time you hear about an investigation in the state of Ohio, BCI may well be involved. Thanks for joining us.